It always begins the same way: summer nights, laughter, the comfort of friends, and the illusion that nothing bad can ever happen when the air is warm and the drinks are flowing.
Well, they aren't
But
gonna
beneath
win,
the
are they?
haze of good times,
like
danger
this.
waits like a predator in the dark. Imagine meeting someone who seems harmless, even friendly, only to wake up in the dead of night with them standing silently at the foot of your bed, their hands where they should never be. Imagine walking along a beach under the moonlight, only to see a pale figure watching you from the surf, and when the light touches him, he bolts toward you with unnatural speed. Or picture yourself on a boat, drunk, laughing, when shadows from another vessel
that
dive into the black water and claw their way onto your deck. These are not stories you hear and forget. These are nightmares that stain your memory
Do you see them
forever. Welcome to The Price Paid, the channel where real horror lives. Hit that subscribe button, because the stories you're about to hear are not urban legends, they happened. And if you're not careful, they could happen to you. When I first met Matt, I never imagined the encounter would spiral into one of the most disturbing experiences of my life. It was one of those warm summer nights at a bar in Chicago, crowded and loud, where the sound of laughter mingled with the hum of sports commentary from the television above the counter. We started talking casually, two strangers bonding over a Cubs game, drinking like old friends even though we had just met. He was easy to talk to, confident without being arrogant, and when we exchanged Instagram accounts later that night, I noticed his page was filled with pictures of traveling, working out, and partying. He looked like a normal 20-something guy, maybe even a little too polished, the type of person who knew how to curate an image. The next day, by some strange coincidence, I ran into him again at a different bar, this time celebrating a friend's birthday. Matt acted like it was fate, as though we were meant to keep running into each other. He charmed my friends, hovered close without overstepping, and blended in enough that no one raised an eyebrow. When he later invited me out golfing, I accepted, thinking it was harmless. It was something I wasn't good at, but I figured a casual Sunday activity couldn't possibly lead to trouble. We played a few holes, had lunch, and parted ways without anything strange happening. By then, I thought he was just a friendly, sociable guy who liked having someone to hang out with. Then came the invitation that would change everything: a hiking trip to Arizona, just the two of us. He said he wanted to see the Grand Canyon, that it had been on his list forever. I hesitated. Traveling across the country with someone I barely knew seemed reckless, but the more I thought about it, the more I convinced myself it was fine. His Instagram showed him with tons of friends, he carried himself with confidence, and he offered to handle most of the planning. I even asked my closest friends to join, but they declined, leaving me with the choice of either missing the opportunity or just taking the risk. I chose to go. We landed in Phoenix on August 15th. The air was thick with desert heat even at night, a dry oven-like blast that clung to your skin. Matt rented a car and we grabbed food and beer before driving to the Airbnb. That was the first red flag. The house only had one bed. He pointed casually at the couch, saying it pulled out, and insisted I shouldn't worry about paying him for the stay. At the time, I brushed it off as generosity, but part of me felt uneasy. That night, I fell asleep on the couch, the kind of exhausted sleep that follows a day of travel. Sometime after midnight, I stirred awake. The sound was small, just footsteps in the kitchen butt, enough to pull me out of my drowsy haze. Matt moved through the shadows, drinking water, before slipping back into his room. I told myself it was nothing, just a housemate moving around. But the seed of unease had been planted. The next day, the Grand Canyon took my breath away. It was endless, a scar carved into the earth that no photo could ever capture. We hiked Bright Angel Trail, and I nearly collapsed from the heat and strain, while Matt seemed almost energized, laughing at how badly I struggled. He took countless photos, each moment carefully curated for his feed. Later, when we went out drinking in Phoenix, I realized just how much alcohol he could put away. I got drunk fast, too drunk to notice much of anything, and when I woke the next morning, my phone was not where I had left it. At first, I thought I had misplaced it while stumbling around the Airbnb, but then I remembered hearing the click of a door shut in the night. When I confronted him about it, he played dumb,
What is that?
then bent down and miraculously found my phone under the bed. His grin was too quick, too rehearsed. I felt my stomach twist. I should have left right then, but I didn't. I convinced myself I was overthinking. It was only one more night. That night, he offered me his bed, saying it was fair since I had slept on the couch before. I was drunk enough not to argue, but the locks on the bedroom door were cheap, the kind you could open with a butter knife, and I knew it. That awareness pressed down on me as I drifted off. I woke up in darkness, a strange sensation pulling me from sleep. At first, I reached for my phone, but the charger dangled empty from the wall. My phone was gone again. Then I saw him, Matt was lying face down on the floor beside my bed, sprawled unnaturally like he had collapsed there. My blood turned to ice. When I shouted at him, he sat up slowly, muttering about being blackout drunk, about forgetting I was in the bed. His excuse made no sense. He wasn't near the door. He was inches away from where my phone had been. I accused him of taking it, and his response was eerie calmness. He crawled under the bed and pulled it out instantly, smiling like it had all been a misunderstanding. But his eyes didn't look like the eyes of someone embarrassed or drunk. They looked hungry, predatory. I retreated to the couch, locking the door behind me. Hours later, I woke again. This time, I didn't need to search for him. He was there, standing at the foot of the bed, just a silhouette in the dark. And then without warning, he sat down, his hand reaching for my foot. That was the moment I screamed, shoved him off, and packed my bags in a frenzy. He didn't argue. He didn't beg me to stay. He just sat on the couch watching with an unnerving blankness, like an NPC from a video game. I called an Uber before dawn and fled to the airport, spending the rest of the morning wide-eyed and trembling as I waited for my flight. I changed my seat, desperate not to sit near him. Later, after blocking his number on Instagram, I reached out to someone who had once been tagged in his photos. Their response confirmed everything. Matt was not just odd, he was dangerous. Others had cut him off after unsettling encounters, warning me that he should be in jail. I still wonder what he was looking for on my phone, what he wanted from me, and why I ignored the warnings that screamed in my gut. But I do know this. Sometimes the scariest monsters don't come from ghost stories or urban legends. Sometimes they wear the face of a friendly stranger you meet at a bar. Ocean City in July feels like a dream. The air smells of salt and sunscreen. The boardwalk hums with laughter, and the sound of crashing waves mixes with the buzz of arcades and music from beach bars. That summer, I had come home from college to Maryland for a short break, and all I wanted was time with my two best friends, Jason and Marcus. We had grown up together, spent countless summers at the shore, and now that college had scattered us across different states, any chance to reunite felt precious. Jason's family owned a modest beach house, nothing glamorous, but it was perfect for a weekend escape. We spent the first day like kids again playing games at the arcade, walking the crowded boardwalk, eating greasy fries and funnel cake, and watching families build sandcastles under the scorching sun. By nightfall, we were back at the house, drinking beers, laughing about old high school stories, and soaking in the kind of nostalgia that only hits when you realize how much time has passed. Around midnight, someone suggested we head back to the beach. There's a strange pull about the ocean at night. It feels calmer, more secretive, like stepping into a world not meant for human eyes. We walked down the empty boardwalk, the lamps casting pale yellow halos on the wooden planks. The beach below was dark, with only the faint shimmer of the moon through clouds giving the sand its ghostly glow. It felt abandoned, yet alive with the whispers of waves. We carried nothing but hoodies, our phones, and a flashlight Jason had grabbed. No one planned a swimway, just wanted to walk, talk, and let the night carry us. At first it was peaceful. The cold surf lapped at our ankles, and the sound of water filled the silence between jokes and conversations. We eventually sprawled out near an empty lifeguard tower, the kind they pull down at night, lying on the sand and staring at the sky. That's when Jason suddenly sat up. "Is that someone walking over there?" he whispered. Marcus and I followed his gaze. At first, I saw nothing but a blur, a darker shape against the darker horizon. Then I noticed it too, a figure walking along the shoreline, about 50 or 60 yards away. The silhouette was unmistakably human, yet something about it immediately felt wrong. The movements weren't fluid or casual, not like someone strolling on the beach. The figure's steps were stiff, mechanical, as though each motion was being forced. Its arms hung lifeless at its sides, and its head bent downward, like it was studying the sand beneath its feet. We whispered nervously, trying to convince ourselves it was nothing a drunk tourist, a lonely night walker, maybe even someone searching for lost keys. But none of those explanations settled the unease in my chest. Minutes passed. The figure stopped walking. It stood completely still, silent, watching. And it was closer now, maybe 30 yards away. The three of us grew restless.
What is that?
We avoided looking directly at him, as though acknowledging his presence would make it worse. Marcus muttered under his breath, "No one just stands like that." Then Jason leaned toward me, his voice trembling. "Kyle, he's not just standing, he's looking at you." I laughed nervously, brushing it off, but Jason's face was pale. He insisted. The man's head was tilted not straight down, not at the ocean but directly toward us. Jason, perhaps out of fear or bravado, clicked on the flashlight. The beam flickered weakly, battery nearly dead, but for one brief second, it illuminated him. The sight seared into my brain.
His skin was unnaturally pale, almost gray, like waterlogged flesh. He wore wet jeans, the fabric clinging to his body, and no shirt. His chest looked sunken, ribs almost visible.
His eyes bulged wide, unblinking, reflecting the weak light like an animal in the dark. And the moment the beam touched him, he moved. He didn't just start running, he launched. From stillness to a dead sprint in an instant, his body lunging forward with unnatural speed. The sand barely slowed him down. His arms didn't pump, they dangled stiffly, but his legs carried him toward us like some predatory machine. We screamed and bolted. The sand fought against our feet, sucking at every step, but adrenaline gave us wings. Marcus shouted behind me, his voice breaking, "Go, go." My lungs felt like fire, the cold night air slicing into me. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear the pounding rhythm of pursuit. We didn't stop until we hit the wooden steps of the boardwalk, climbing 2 at a time. Only then did we turn. The beach below was empty. No figure, no footprints. Just the endless waves crashing against the shore. My chest heaved, and the silence pressed heavier than the pursuit itself. We hurried back to the house, locking every door and window, dragging blinds shut like children, warding off monsters. No one slept that night. Every creak, every gust of wind felt like footsteps returning for us. The next morning, we tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was some unhinged homeless man. Maybe the lack of footprints was just the tide erasing them quickly. But deep down, we didn't believe it. Something about him defied explanation. His speed, his eyes, the way he vanished. The weeks that followed brought no peace. Jason confessed he had been having nightmares. Always the same. The pale man standing silently in the corner of his room, soaked in seawater, his head tilted at that same unnatural angle. I didn't tell him at first, but I had the same dream, the same posture, the same unblinking eyes staring in silence. Sometimes I woke at night to the sound of wet footsteps in the hall, though the house was empty. Almost a year later, I saw a post in a local Ocean City Facebook group. A grainy photo taken at 1 a.m. showed a figure by the water, head bent down. The caption asked, "Does anyone know who this creepy guy is?" My heart froze. It was him, the pale man. The comments chilled me even further. Dozens of locals said they had seen him too. Some claimed he stood for hours without moving. One said he walked into the ocean and never came out. Another found wet footprints on their porch, blocks away from the beach with no prints leading to or from them.
Almost there.
I don't know what we encountered that night, but I do know this. It wasn't human, and it hasn't left me. I'll never step foot on that beach after dark again. I grew up in a small coastal town in Massachusetts, the kind of place where summers stretch endlessly, where the air is heavy with salt and fish, and where kids like me spent every free moment on the water. By the time I was 19, I knew every sandbar, every inlet, and every stretch of open water like the back of my hand. That summer, I had a dock boy job, sweaty and exhausting, but it left my evenings free to meet up with friends. Like most kids our age, we lived for the nights. One particular night started like so many others. After my shift, I picked up my friend Emerson. He was the one with a fake ID, so he handled alcohol runs for the group. We stocked up, laughing about how we'd kill time while waiting for the rest of our friends to finish their shifts. I had access to my family's old boat, nothing fancy but reliable enough to take out into the harbor. So that was the plan. Sit on the water, crack open beers, and enjoy the twilight until the others joined us. We motored around the peninsula to a small cove where boats often anchored in the evening. There were a few others already there, music drifting across the water, lights reflecting on the ripples. We dropped anchor between 2 boats, their laughter and music making the night feel alive. But as the sun dipped lower, boats began to peel away. First one, then another, until only the boat to our right remained. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Their lights glowed faintly, their music played softly, and Emerson and I settled into the easy rhythm of drinking and talking. But when their music abruptly stopped, silence rolled over the cove like a blanket. I half expected them to leave too, but instead, their lights stayed on, casting eerie shadows across the water.
Did you hear that?
Emerson frowned, watching them. Then he whispered, "Dude, they're staring at us." I turned around, half drunk and grinning, thinking he was messing with me. But he wasn't. 3 figures stood at the edge of their boat, perfectly still, facing us. They didn't wave, didn't call out, didn't move at all, just stared. In the glow of their deck light, they looked more like silhouettes than people. I tried to laugh it off, telling Emerson maybe they were just curious or bored, but his expression was tight, anxious. Minutes dragged by. They didn't stop watching. It wasn't casual interest, it was fixed, deliberate, predatory. The longer they stood there, the more wrong it felt. To break the tension, I grabbed the old megaphone stored under the wheel and shouted a joke across the water. Something stupid about selling tickets to the show. My voice echoed off the dark, and I laughed at my own drunken humor. Emerson didn't laugh. He told me to shut up. That's when one of them laughed back. It wasn't normal laughter. It was low, raspy, slow, almost mocking. The sound slid across the water and wrapped around us, sinking into my bones. The grin fell from my face. Something was terribly wrong. Emerson stood up suddenly, his voice sharp. "We need to go. Now." I wanted to brush him off, but before I could respond, there was a splash. Then another. 2 figures had jumped into the water. Only one remained standing on the boat, still staring at us. Emerson scrambled to pull the anchor up, his panic contagious. I was frozen, half laughing, half terrified, until I heard the sound of water moving unnaturally close. The swimmers weren't splashing anymore, but something was in the water, moving toward us. Then it happened. A hand appeared on the railing at the back of our boat, pale fingers gripping the metal. Another hand reached up near Emerson, who was hauling the anchor with frantic strength. I finally snapped out of it, lunging for the wheel and turning the key. The engine roared to life. Without thinking, I jammed the throttle forward. The boat lurched, smashing into a nearby sandbar with a gut-wrenching scrape before bouncing backward. The force ripped one of the hands from the railing, sending the figure splashing back into the black water. Emerson was yelling, swinging the anchor like a weapon, his knuckles white. My heart hammered as I threw the boat into reverse, backing hard until we were free of the cove. We sped into open water, the old boat shuddering against the waves, my hands trembling as I held the wheel. For a moment, I thought we were safe. Then I looked back. Lights. The boat we had left behind was moving, fast, closing in on us. Their bow cut through the water, gaining with terrifying speed. The night air stank of gasoline and salt, and my stomach twisted with the realization that we weren't outrunning them. Emerson's voice cracked with fear as he shouted, "Who are they? What do they want?" I had no answers. I could only push the throttle harder, though the boat was already at its limit. 5 minutes of terror stretched endlessly. Their boat closed the distance until I could see the rise and fall of its hull against the waves. Then, by some miracle, I made a desperate turn, steering dangerously close to the shore. The other boats swerved wide, unable to follow without beaching themselves. In that split second, we broke away. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of the docks. My hands shook as I tied the boat, my mind reeling. Emerson was pale, his clothes soaked with sweat, his eyes burning with rage and fear. He cursed me for not listening sooner, for laughing it off. He was right. My arrogance nearly got us killed. We never saw those people again, and maybe that was the strangest part. No reports of strange boats, no explanations. Just a night of silence that left more questions than answers. Were they trying to rob us, hurt us, or was it something darker, something beyond explanation, hidden beneath the cover of darkness and salt air? I'll never know, but I do know this. Without Emerson's instinct, without his refusal to ignore the danger, I might not be here to tell the story. Some nights when I lie awake, I can still hear that laugh, the slow, rasping sound echoing across the water, and I wonder if the figures from that boat are still out there, waiting for the next pair of kids to wander into their cove. Summer is supposed to be a season of freedom. Long days bleed into warm nights, filled with laughter, drinks, and the promise of adventure. It is when we lower our guard, convinced the world is safe because the sun lingers late and the air hums with life. Yet, hidden beneath the golden glow of summer, there are shadows, and those shadows wait for the careless, the trusting, the unsuspecting. 3 different stories, 3 different groups of people, yet the same chilling pattern. Each began with something ordinary. A chance encounter at a bar, a late-night walk on the beach, a boat ride under the stars. They sound harmless, even idyllic, but that's what makes them so terrifying. Evil doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a warning siren. It arrives quietly, disguised as opportunity, curiosity, or fun. Take the trip to Arizona, meeting a new friend over beers and baseball. How could that lead to danger? Matt seemed harmless, even exciting, offering a trip to one of the most breathtaking places in the world. But trust was his weapon. He lured someone far from home, isolated him in a strange place, and revealed himself not as a buddy, but as a predator. The small details, the missing phone, the excuses that didn't add up, the cold eyes staring in the dark were the cracks in his mask. By the time the truth was undeniable, escape was the only option. The price of ignoring instincts was nearly catastrophic. Then there was the figure on the midnight beach. Who hasn't been tempted by the allure of walking along the shore at night, when the crowds are gone and the ocean feels like it belongs only to you? It should have been peaceful, even romantic. Instead, it became a scene ripped straight from a nightmare. The pale man, waterlogged and unnatural, didn't behave like a person. His frozen stance, his sudden sprint, his bulging eyes, they broke the rules of what we expect from another human being. And when multiple people saw him, when dreams carried his image into bedrooms miles away from the shore, the question grew darker. Was he ever human at all? The summer beach, a place of joy, turned into a hunting ground. And then there were the strangers on the boat, drinking with a friend, floating beneath the stars. Anchored in a calm covert was the perfect summer night. Until it wasn't. The silhouettes watching silently, the sinister laughter, the hands reaching up from black water. Their intentions were never spoken, but sometimes silence screams louder than words. Were they predators looking for victims? Or were they simply playing a cruel, dangerous game? It doesn't matter. In that moment, the sea was no longer freedom. It was a trap. And the only escape was sheer luck and quick thinking. What ties these stories together is not just the fear they inspire, but the false sense of security that precedes them. Summer lulls us into forgetting that danger doesn't disappear with the daylight. We think the bar full of people protects us from predators. We think the ocean is empty when the tourists go home. We think the boat beneath our feet makes us untouchable. But each of these stories proves otherwise. The very settings that made the characters feel safe crowds, beaches, boats were the same settings that became their nightmares. There's also something deeply unsettling about how human these threats appear, yet how inhuman they behave. Matt looked like a normal guy, but he stalked, manipulated, and invaded boundaries like a predator. The pale man looked human, but moved like a thing pulled from the bottom of the ocean. The strangers on the boat were unmistakably people, yet their laughter and silence made them seem alien, detached from empathy. In each case, the danger wore a familiar mask, but behind it was something unrecognizable. Perhaps the scariest part of all is the aftermath. The horror didn't end when the narrator escaped. It lingered. The victims left Arizona, but questions about Matt still haunted them. The beachgoers ran from the pale man, but his image followed them into their dreams and into the dreams of others. The boys in Massachusetts returned to shore, but the memory of that raspy laugh and those reaching hands left a scar that no amount of time could erase. These stories remind us that survival doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes you get away, but the fear stays with you. Summer is deceptive. Its brightness hides the shadows that lurk just beneath the surface. We chase adventure, thinking danger belongs only to horror movies or urban legends. But these weren't legends, they happened. Real people, real nights, real terror. And that's why they're unforgettable. So, what can we learn? Instincts matter. When something feels wrong, it probably is. A stranger's charm, a silent figure in the distance, a group watching too intently, those are signs that shouldn't be ignored. The price of brushing off that gut feeling can be far greater than we imagine. Because sometimes, summer doesn't give you memories to cherish. Sometimes, it gives you nightmares that never leave. Looking back at these three stories, it's easy to see how they began with innocence. A friendly night out at the bar, a quiet walk along the shoreline, a few drinks on a boat beneath the stars. Each of these moments should have been nothing more than part of a perfect summer. Yet they turn into nightmares because danger doesn't always appear with a mask or a weapon in hand. Sometimes it smiles at you, sometimes it stares at you from the shadows, and sometimes it laughs across the water. The young man who trusted Matt learned the hard way that predators often disguise themselves as friends. They don't reveal their intentions all at once. They wait until you're isolated, far from home, before they show you the true darkness behind their smile. In Arizona, what seemed like a trip with a new buddy turned into a desperate fight for personal safety. The lesson is simple but critical. Never ignore red flags, even if they feel small. A missing phone, a strange excuse, a look in someone's eyes, those are signs worth paying attention to. On the beach in Ocean City, 3 friends discovered that some things defy explanation. The pale man was not just a stranger, he was something else, something outside the rules of nature. His unnatural speed, his lifeless eyes, and the haunting dreams he left behind suggest that danger can sometimes be supernatural, something beyond our control. But even then, the rule is the same. When fear tells you to run, listen. Running saved their lives. And on that boat in Massachusetts, a night of fun nearly turned into tragedy. Emerson's instincts told him something wasn't right. He saw the danger before his friend did, and that awareness made the difference between survival and disaster. It is a chilling reminder that sometimes ignoring your instincts or mocking the fear of others can cost you dearly. So what do these stories teach us? Always trust your gut. Don't brush off fear as paranoia. If something feels wrong, distance yourself, lock the door, call for help, or simply leave. It's better to be cautious than to pay the price later. Don't let the setting a bar full of people, a beach under the moonlight, a boat surrounded by calm water convince you that you're safe. Because as we've seen, safety is an illusion. The truth is, horror doesn't live only in movies or ghost stories. It hides in plain sight, waiting for those who let their guard down. And if these survivors hadn't trusted their instincts, if they had ignored the warning, Science Suite might be hearing these stories from police reports instead of first-hand accounts. Remember this: summer can give you beautiful memories, but it can also take everything from you in a single night. So be careful, stay alert, and never underestimate the shadows that move when no one else is watching. Welcome to The Price Paid. Subscribe now, because the next story might be the warning that saves your life.